Okay, let me just start out by saying, if you're a time-traveling colonist from 1776 and you're somehow watching this video, you're not going to want to stick around. It's going to get ugly real fast for you. Oh, but you did win the war, so congrats on that, I guess. And drop a comment down below and let us know how you got this time-traveling capability, because that's pretty cool. Alrighty then, let's just dive on in and get straight to the text. At the start of the war, Great Britain was confident that it would soon end the revolution and regain control of the colonies. After all, it had one of the strongest military forces in the world. The British Navy's 270 warships controlled the seas. British shipyards built over 200 more warships during the war. Yeah, I'd be feeling pretty confident too if I were them. At any given point, doing some quick math, Great Britain had about 470 ships patrolling the globe. I mean, this fact alone puts the colonists dead in the water. And yes, pun fully intended there. But like our opening quote said in yesterday's video, wars are won by men. And Great Britain had the men. Like a lot of them. We'll get more into what those numbers were later in this video, but for now, all you need to know is that there was tons of them. And these blokes were incredibly well trained, too. It was their job. In fact, the British Army's training regimen was so strict that you could get punished for just about anything that the officials deemed out of line. Our book tells us that soldiers would be whipped if they stole from another one of their fellow soldiers. I'm not sure why they went with this example, because stealing is generally frowned upon no matter who you are or where you're from, so it's not a fantastic example, but the point remains that they got punished a lot. And in addition to the well-trained army that they had, Great Britain had something else up their sleeves that the Continental Army definitely did not possess. Those deep pockets. Unlike the American Congress, the British Parliament had money to buy food and weapons for its army. Each soldier was given a uniform, a musket, and a bayonet, or a sharp blade that soldiers attached to the front end of their muskets to use in close fighting. Usually the more money you have, the more money you can spend. America was just trying to get off the ground as a new country, so they were basically broke. Their counterparts, on the other hand, were far from it. Think of it this way. If you've ever tried to open up your own business or know somebody that has, generally earning a profit in the first year is very hard to do. This would be America. However, if your store is super successful and you have them placed all over the globe, money's pretty easy to come by. This, obviously, is Great Britain. And so with that money, every British soldier was outfitted to look like this guy here. You don't really have to stretch your imagination that much to figure out how the colonists came up with the nickname of Redcoats for their enemies. A quick tangent here while we're on the subject of Redcoats. The New England Patriots football team, the one where they get their name from the colonists, award their most iconic and successful players with a jacket upon entering their team Hall of Fame. But you want to know what's ironic about this? The color of the jacket that they give them, it's red. Like the color of their enemies. Although maybe it's because they're so successful as a patriot that earning this red coat is like a form of dominance, showing that they can even defeat their biggest enemy, the Redcoats. Huh. I don't know, but let's get back to our lesson before I go even further down into that rabbit hole. So let's talk numbers. I'd already said that this army is huge, and here's just how huge I'm talking about. Oh, and while I'm reading this, keep in mind that at its biggest, the Continental Army had an army of 24,000 people. Worldwide, there were about 48,000 soldiers in the British Army. Most were poor men who earned low pay. Great Britain hired soldiers from other countries, including about 30,000 mercenaries from Germany to fight against the colonists. There's a lot we're going to break down here. First of all, without even considering their reinforcements, 48,000 British soldiers is double the amount that the colonists had at their strongest. And in reality, that 48,000 was actually probably closer to 50,000. So that fact alone qualifies the US Army for underdog status. But it gets worse. As if over twice the amount of men wasn't enough, Great Britain opens up that wallet of theirs and pays out 30,000 more fighters from Germany in the form of mercenaries. A mercenary is basically just a soldier for hire, and they'll fight for anyone that has the biggest paycheck for them, which in this case is Great Britain. Okay, so if we take the 50,000 British soldiers and then add on the 30,000 mercenaries, we're already up to 80,000 soldiers fighting for Great Britain. It can't get worse for the colonists, can it? Oh, but it can. Thousands of American Indians joined the British as well. Many sided with Great Britain because since 1763, the British had helped protect their lands from settlers. Thousands of loyalists also fought for Great Britain. New York's many loyalists joined the British side at the start of the war, as did other loyalists from North and South Carolina later on. The colonists need all the help they can get, and now their neighbors are joining the other side. I knew New York could never be trusted. Shame on them for always making life tough for Massachusetts. Our book says thousands of loyalists, but that number wasn't really specific enough for me, so I did some digging, and I found out that that number is really 19,000. Plus, don't forget about those Native Americans who were still bitter about the French and Indian War and wanted to stay loyal to the ones protecting them. It's not quite clear how many thousands of them were fighting, but we'll just say it's an even 5,000. Trust me, we don't need to make that number any more bigger than it already is. So if you've been tracking with us here, the Continental Army, at best, had 24,000 soldiers within it. And after you add up every single group of people that fought with the British, that total comes out to about 104,000 fighters on the British side. That's roughly 4,300 British soldiers to one Continental soldier. My goodness, it's a wonder how we even made it out of this thing alive. For the sake of that poor time-traveling colonist, let's wrap up our video today by taking some notes. Open up your workbook to page 85 and take a look at section 2, which is appropriately named the British Army. Our notes ask us to list 3 ways in which the British Army differed from the Continental Army, but we're going to list 4 because we're just that good. First up, this army was massive and well-trained. Second, not only were they well-trained, but they did this for a living and got paid as full-time soldiers. Meanwhile, the colonists were just doing it for free. And being full-time soldiers, it's only natural to believe that these guys were experienced fighters as well. And last but not least, the 4th note we're going to write is that Great Britain had money from Parliament to help them buy supplies for the war and hire extra fighters. Alrighty, that was super depressing for the colonists. But don't worry, it gets better for them. So guys, that's going to do it for today's daily dose of history. Be sure to head back to the Google Classroom and answer our question of the day. Like I said, despite all odds, it does get better for the colonists. And you'll have to tune into Monday's video to figure out how. So, with that being said, I'll see you right here on Monday. Have a great weekend!